Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to Jean Monnet Memorial Conference, celebrating the 30th anniversary of Jean Monnet Program and Europe Day of 2019. I'm Professor Jason Lee, today's Master of Conference, and I'm Jean Monnet Chair at Korea University. So on behalf of Korea University, I once again warmly welcome all of you to this very meaningful conference. We will start the opening ceremony, and the opening address will be delivered by Professor Sung-Hoon Park, Executive Director of KU Kiev SBS EU Center, and Jean Monnet Chair of Korea University. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Sung-Hoon Park.
His Excellency Dr. Michael Reiterer, Ambassador of the European Union to Korea, Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, and ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the EU Center of Korea University, titled KU Kiev SBS EU Center, I'd like to welcome all of you to this international conference. I feel honored and greatly pleased to organize this important event in a close cooperation with the EU delegation and also the Nordic Benelux Center of Korea University. In fact, this event is a result of common efforts of 7 Jean Monnet programs currently run in Korea. Korea University is running Jean Monnet Network Project, which is under my leadership. And also we have 4 Jean Monnet Center of Excellencies at Seoul National University, Yonsei University, Busan National University, and Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. And also the EU Studies Association of Korea, USA Korea, is running an association program. And last but not least, the Gyeongbuk National University is running Jean Monnet Module Program. And the 6 institutions of higher education of Korea running these programs are all gathered, and we have collaborated to host this event, and we are all the co-hosts. As far as I remember, this is the first academic activity we have ever co-organized in the past 30 years. So at this juncture, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Ambassador Reiterer for his great initiative to make this event possible. Ladies and gentlemen, Jean Monnet is alive, especially his idea of peace and community building may be very valuable in the context of East Asia and Northeast Asia, where uncertainties and instabilities are displayed in international relations. I am confident that the speakers of this conference will delve into the questions of how Jean Monnet's ideas, philosophy, and spirit can be utilized to enable peace and prosperity in the region and the entire world. And we'll be able to come up with some concrete recommendations to policymakers. I hope all of you enjoy this conference greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Park. Next, congratulatory remark will be delivered by His Excellency Dr. Michael Reiterer, Ambassador of the European Union to Republic of Korea. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcoming Ambassador Michael Reiterer.
Well, good afternoon, friends, colleagues. As Professor Park was saying, I'm very glad that this cooperation could happen. I invest twice a year a lunch in all the chairs and representatives of Jean Monnet. And I'm very pleased to see that also meetings, lunches, receptions can serve a purpose and lead to results. And cooperation, I think, is very much the idea for which the European Union stands. And cooperation is exactly what you need here in Northeast Asia in order to come to this peace for which many are working in the region and outside of the region. Well, you all know, and as good Koreans, I think you have practiced what was to do. Yesterday was the 8th of May, Parents' Day in Korea. It's a day to express gratitude to parents for bringing us into life and helping us to become what we are today. But today is the 9th of May. And the European Union celebrates the pioneers that brought the European Union to life and made it what it is today. So what are we celebrating today? Well, Robert Schumann's proposal for former enemies to pool authority over the strategic assets of that time, we are talking about the 1950s, coal and steel, ultimately led to a new form of international relations in Europe. States learned to cooperate instead of fighting. It was not, and that's important to underline, the end of different and sometimes opposing interests. No. But the means have changed. The party with the better argument, the party that could build consensus, which could network, is now the winner. The conference rooms of Brussels replaced the blood-soaked fields of Flanders, a notorious battleground of World War I. With peace between EU member states now taken for granted, you might wonder, what is the purpose of the European Union today? And I'm pretty sure many of them say, oh, this guy is talking and he's forgetting about Brexit. No, I'm not forgetting about Brexit, but Brexit is also, I would say, a certain show of strength of the European Union, because you don't have to start a war or whatever to get out of the European Union if you don't want any longer. You just write a letter. According to Article 50, I want to leave. And then the divorce starts. And as any divorce, or most of the divorces, it's a little bit of war of roses, where one partner does not exactly know how to act. But the important thing is, you write a letter, and the legal process gets started. Well, we know that 60 years ago, Jean Monnet was faced with a very similar question. So what does it mean, his project, for the ordinary people? What does it mean to them? Well, and he gave the answer. I don't think there is any one person in Europe who's lived the last 15 years, Jean Monnet speaking, who for a certain moment has not realized that a great deal of the catastrophes we experience came from the fact that those nations have been separated by national sovereignty. And through the European coal and steel community, they see this is the effect of uniting the people. The crisis which we face today, climate change, the threat of weapons of mass destruction, proliferation, terrorism, radicalization, mastering refugee flows, all demand a collective response that goes beyond the national level, beyond the national boundary. Without cooperation, there is no solution to the problems which I have mentioned. We call it today connectivity. ICT, energy, transport infrastructure, people-to-people links through trade, investment, education, and tourism. These are the channels that bring people together across borders. Today's world is increasingly connected. At the same time, it is increasingly unstable and unpredictable. It faces new threats, from climate change to the spillover effects of conflict into other regions, including mass migration or cyber warfare. Managing such a connected but unstable world requires the kind of effective multilateralism and rule of law on which the European Union is built. Indeed, the European Union is now the leading champion in defending these values. Again, let me quote Jean Monnet. The sovereign nations of the past alone can no longer solve the problems of the present. But as we are talking in Korea, still the question remains, is the experience of building peace and integration in Europe relevant to Asia, whose historical conditions and contexts vary vastly? Well, I'm not here to say that one-size-fits-all approach to building trust and cooperation in Asia is the solution. There are certainly difficult, complex, and unique challenges each region and each state faces that cannot be generalized. However, East Asia already has institutionalized regional processes. Think of ASEAN and related forums like the ASEAN Regional Forum or the East Asia Summit, the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat here in Seoul, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and last but not least, the Asia-Europe meeting connecting Europe and Asia. President Moon has recognized the potential for functional cooperation to build regional peace and cooperation. Indeed, he specifically referred to the European coal and steel community in his vision of a Northeast Asian regional rail community and networks of connectivity to the North and to Central Asia and with South and Southeast Asia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we also have learned in Europe is leadership is necessary in transforming vision into reality. Let me quote Jean Monnet again. The integrated Europe, as we know, has never existed. One had to genuinely create Europe. You need an act of creation. You need a creator. And this is exactly where we venerate Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, Konrad Adenauer, Charles de Gaulle, and European Commission presidents like Jacques Delors. Of course, integration and building peace is not only a top-down process. Again, as President Moon said this week, great achievements are often brought about by the will and drive of the ordinary people. Jean Monnet, it must be the people that must take charge. This is precisely where education is so important. Jean Monnet, the community we created is not an end in itself, but it is a process of change, continuing in process. Well, the European Union has always been dedicated to projects to expand educational opportunities. Studies of integration appropriately bear the name Jean Monnet. But also the Erasmus program encourages students in Europe to cross borders, to study, to research, and to work in other countries. Well, they are young students. They also fall in love. With 4 million students having participated in Erasmus, We already have a generation of Erasmus children, born to former Erasmus students who got to know each other while on Erasmus exchange programs. The unique benefit of such an educational exchange is that it allows us to test our own values, to learn from each other, to broaden our horizons, because that's what works against xenophobia, chauvinism, and contributes to the building of open societies, and open societies are more productive and more democratic. It is good to experience that a problem has not just one solution. Persons with different cultures and backgrounds have different ways of problem solving. We just have to respect them. Solving the problem is the solution, not imposing one's will or method. We call that unity in diversity. We are planning on expanding this educational program, spend more money where our mouth is. We want to create more opportunities for people to go abroad, including school pupils, vocational learners, apprentices, students, but also young people outside the formal education system. Korea is a partner to the Erasmus programs, and the EU has continued to expand these educational opportunities beyond Europe. Over 4,730 projects in the field of European integration studies are funded. More than 1,000 universities in 86 countries throughout the world offer courses funded by the Jean Monnet program. The EU also awards scholarships for master students from around the world. Already 8 Korean higher education institutions have participated in a consortium with European universities to run joint master degree programs through Erasmus Mundus Joint Master Degrees Program. Well, we believe that such academic opportunities becomes the basis of a much stronger relationship for future collaboration. Well, I would say Campus Asia is a good example here in Asia to overcome the legacies of the past, bringing Korean, Chinese, and Japanese students together. So today we celebrate the building of peace through connectivity and integration. So in concluding, let me quote Jean Monnet once more. A hope and an assurance that's the greatest contribution to peace that can be made. Thank you very much. And I brought from Lausanne recently, from the archives of Jean Monnet, a few original quotes from Jean Monnet, and my collaborators greatly put some subtitles for those who prefer to read in Korean. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for your cooperation, and thank you very much for being here. And just make sure that the Europe Day idea is not limited to one day. It should be for 365 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. As Ambassador Reiter said, next we have a very special congratulatory remark. The Jean Monnet Foundation, based in Lausanne, Switzerland, sent us a very special video clip in which we will meet Jean Monnet. So we will watch and listen to his message. So ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Jean Monnet.
Well, Mr. Monnet, do you think that such a thing can work in your experience that you've had here in the community?
Yeah, it does work. It does work. In fact, the existence of the coal and steel community is the proof that unification of Europe is possible. Now, when you ask whether it works, the real question is whether the people of the Six Nations accept, for the first time, decisions that are being made by an authority that is not one of their national sovereignty.
Well, have they? What specific things have you done that haven't been done before?
Well, we've, as you know, created, according to this treaty and the powers that have been given to this high authority, we've created this common coal market. We've eliminated the barriers that separated those countries. We've eliminated the double prices and the licenses for import and export. And we have, which is the first time it's ever been done, we've now levying a tax. This high authority, this community, is levying a tax on the production of coal and steel of those six nations.
What about ordinary people? What does this mean to them?
Well, I don't think there's anyone in Europe who's lived the last 15 years who at a certain moment has not realized that a great deal of the reasons of the catastrophes that we've experienced came from the fact that those nations have been separated by national sovereignty. And they see in this effort of uniting the people a hope and an assurance that that is the greatest contribution to peace that can be made. And they see in it, at the same time, creation of a big market, therefore prosperity and peace.
Mr. Monnet, your coal steel community is pretty much on the rails now. Well, what's your next step? Where do you go from here?
Well, the next step is the political authority. I think coal and steel was important because it establishes the same common basis for the economies of the people of Europe. But we've reached a point now where the people themselves must take charge of that organization, and there is no other way but have them vote. Because in democracy, how are you going to have the people themselves feel and know that what is happening is their affair unless they vote?
Well, do you mean a constitution, a United States of Europe?
Right.
With elections?
There must be elections. There must be a political authority, but a political authority emanating from the people themselves. And for that reason, elections of by the European people has become now an absolute necessity.
Do you have any timetable in mind?
Yeah, I think we're very close to
Really?
that. Yeah, because you know that the 6 governments of this Schuman Plan have asked the assembly of the Schuman Plan, with the addition of a few members, to draft a plan of constitution. This has been done and has been presented to the governments. Now it's up to the governments now to discuss it and accept it, which I believe they will. And my opinion is that we will have accepted by the government and submitted to Parliament a draft constitution creating a political authority in Europe with the elections by the people. And I believe that the next year or two will see that. And once you have an election by the people of Europe, the same day voting in Cognac and Bremen and Hamburg and Italy and everywhere, then you've really changed something fundamental and you've established, I think, the essential condition that will make the states of Europe happen very quickly.
Okay, so the further messages of John Monnet will be delivered in the round table. So we will, without break, we will start the John Monnet round table with presentations and discussions. And the John Monnet round table will be chaired by Professor Sung-Hoon Park.
Thank you, Professor Lee, and thank you, Michael Reiterer, for your inspiring and insightful speech. Let's get started with our discussion on Jean Monnet, bringing Jean Monnet back, past, present, and future. We have not much time. I think everybody will agree with me that we can talk and talk for hours and hours, but we have only 1.5 hours or less because we have to finish this session at 5:40 or 5:45 because our university's president, Professor Jung Jin-taek, is coming to give his special closing remarks. He has to leave. And also we have the Europe Day reception, which is starting at 6 o'clock p.m. So that we have to allocate time quite effectively. We have 11 panelists, and I will begin this session by introducing the panelists to you. First of all, Professor Jae-sung Lee, the master of the today's event, Jang Monnet Chair of Korea University. Dr. Hung Jong Kim, Senior Research Fellow at Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. He is participating in policy making of Korean government vis-a-vis European Union and European countries. Professor Jae-hoon Park of Incheon National University is here, and he is the person who translated Jang Monnet's memoir into Korean. So you have this thick book, and this is the result of his efforts in cooperation with another professor who is Oh Woo-sak. And we have Benjamin Thompson, professor at Gyeongbuk National University, and he's running Jang Monnet module program at the university. And Professor Kim Si-hong in the program is not able to come, so that he is replaced by Professor Kim Bong-chul, his deputy, and he's deputy director of Jang Monnet Center of Excellence at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. We have next to me Professor Moon Woo-sik at Seoul National University, and Professor Moon is actually the first Jang Monnet Chair awarded to Korea. So he's initiating the Jang Monnet Chair in Korean society, we can say. And Mr. Bae Myung-bok from Jungang Daily, he is editor at large and columnist, and he has been writing on Europe for many, many years. So that Ambassador Reiter has asked me to write good things on Europe when he met here for the first time. Also, we have Professor Yeon-ho Lee, a EU expert, EU politics, and Yonsei University. And he's running, he's a director of the Jang Monnet Center of Excellence at Yonsei University. Professor Jae-deuk Lee, Lee is from Busan National University, and also he's Jang Monnet Chair of EU Economy. Professor Tae-young Kim from Myeongji University, but he is former president of EUSA Korea, EU Studies Association of Korea. And he's running the Jang Monnet Association program, which is supporting the Association of Professors, and the EUSA Korea was selected as a awardee. And last but not least, we have Professor Kim Nam-guk, another Jang Monnet chair at Korea University, and he's expert on EU politics. So we have 11 members now, and we have only 70 minutes. So I'd like to ask all the panelists to speak 5 minutes. I'm sorry for that. 5 minutes. Maximum 6 to 7 minutes. So I don't like to use that, but I have brought this one. 1 minute, 2 minutes left. So without further ado, we can start our discussion. We have divided the discussion into 3 parts: past, present, and future. But the speakers will not be confined to speak on the allocated title. We can have discussion on past, present, and future comprehensively, right? So why don't we start with the Professor Jae-sung Lee? He's talking about the connectivity idea.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, my name is Jae-sung Lee, and I'm sharing my great pleasure and honor to organize this conference, but at the same time delivering the messages on Jean Monnet. So I will start the presentation with the title, Jean Monnet and the Idea of Connectivity. Okay, who is Jean Monnet? I would say he was a man of network, okay? And well, if you Google, or if you go to Google Naver, and it's major portals, and type Jean Monnet, and the Google will say he was a French political economist and diplomat. And from this point, a very small kind of confusion appears, especially in Naver and in Korean media. So political economist sounds like a scholar. So it is not surprising to find in some Korean media, Professor Jean Monnet, or Dr. Jean Monnet, because political economists should be doctor or professor. But in fact, Jean Monnet didn't go to college, but he accumulated a lot more valuable experience from the real world. So when I was studying the European studies, I thought to myself, okay, can I be someday like Jean Monnet? And soon I realized, oh, I studied too much. I stayed in the university for too long. But I'm truly honored to be the Jean Monnet chair and standing in this conference. And actually, the more detailed stories about Jean Monnet will be delivered by Professor Park Jae-hoon, who is a Korean translator of his memoirs. So I will leave this part to Professor Park. So Jean Monnet provided the idea of European integration, and he's the father of European integration. But I would say, yes, he was an idealist, but at the same time, he was a realist in making his idea realized. Who is Jean Monnet? He's a French, but actually he was an outsider to a typical French elite groups. And he spent a lot of time in the UK, in the United States, and during the First and Second World War. So he was the European. He was a man of European integration, but at the same time, I would say he was transatlanticist. That means he spent a lot of time in the US, and one of his biggest political assets was his Washington network. The Secretary Dulles, and reaching to President Eisenhower. And so he knew many key policy makers in the United States, especially in the aftermath of the Second World War, and that became a source of the mediating power. He was not just idealist, but he was a deal maker. He knew how to make a deal. And as a son of cognac makers, he had cognac in his pantry, and while reading some of the many history books, a couple of the U.S. counterpart and European counterpart start writing a note or letter saying, "Oh, I still remember the flavor of the cognac you gave me last Christmas." Okay, so he was a man of network, and I would say idea of integration. Idea alone cannot survive. Idea can survive with interest. Idea can survive with the institution. Interest, mutual interest, the win-win setting. Mutual interest will give nutrition to idea. And institution will give a durability of idea to persist. So I would say mutual interest was and are essential. And a typical case was the European coal and steel community. And idea should be supported by real politics. It should survive in the politics. And it was Robert Schuman who actually provided the political support for his idea. Next, idea can survive by multiple supporters. And this, I would say, founding fathers. Not one leader, not one flag, but multiple flag and multiple leaders, these people could stand together. And so that was how idea can lead to connectivity. So this is my last page. We started this conference with the idea of bringing Jean Monnet back, and what we should bring. I would say, first, bring people back. So people at the center of integration. Second, bringing network back. Single flag is not sufficient. We need network. Bringing interest back. Win-win setting, common interest is important. Bringing politics back. A careful political support and engineering is also important. And lastly, bring a dream back. A long-term vision is a driving force for integration. So I will stop my presentation here, and I will pass the remaining message to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Kim from KIP. He has the title of Brexit in the Eye of Jean Monnet, how Jean Monnet sees the Brexit discussion.
Thank you very much. I'm talking about the Brexit. I have been dealing with the Brexit since the fall, I think, of 2015. And I have conducted research and then sometimes participate in conference and also sometimes giving lecture and sometimes even broadcasting to the public as well. And after receiving the unexpected decisions of the British people, that was about 3 years ago, on June 24th, 2016, and observing chaos and frustration over the past almost 3 years, I have wondered actually how Jean Monnet would have resolved this situation if he is now here in Europe. An excellent negotiator and truthful, sincere, and idealistic pioneer of European integration, he must have a solution, I guess, maybe. Sometimes I think, but in many cases I would also think even Jean Monnet would give up producing any clear solution of the chaotic situation like this. This is why I came to see Jean Monnet's memoir again and again through the Professor Park Jae-eun's translation, also the English version. Sorry, I do not touch the French version. Right. And Jean Monnet and his relationship with England was very special, very unique, distinctive. In 1905, when he was just 16 years old, he was first dispatched to London by his father's instruction. And then in London, he learned both business and English for 2 years. And then he also dispatched to Canada, Egypt, and Russia, and the United States, and then many other countries, including China as well. And during the First and Second World War, he pioneered the establishment of the Franco-British Accord, coordinating arms production. I think that is the first establishment that he has official, relations with Britain. And this approach came to fruition later in the war with joint efforts such as with executives and also the Allied Maritime Transport Council. His affection to the UK and British people was very special. And then without the UK, the future of Europe would not be viable, he firmly believed. His appreciation of the UK does not only just reach the work relation between the two countries. He appreciates the values that the British people preserve, such as respect for freedom and respect for institutionalization. Of course, there are many things about the Jean Monnet's words about the institutionalization, so I would not repeat the importance of institutionalization. And that was one of the reasons why Jean Monnet was so optimistic to join Britain to this community. However, when it comes to the European integration, the UK was sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally hindered the process of further integration of the original six. Let me take an example. In 1956, around there was 56 and 57, then the British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan proposed the idea of a free trade area to the community. It is planned to include all OEEC countries together with the common market countries of 6. Is this a progress or a retrogress? Then he explains clearly that he prepared the future of community without diluting. If it is necessary to link the UK and other European countries to the community, it is equally important that this union should respect the integration of the community itself. So, integration of community, preserving the value of the community, should be ahead of the interest between the UK and the community. This is a part of speech delivered by Jean Monnet in 1957 to Harrogate in the United Kingdom. We can find Jean Monnet's understanding on the UK through his words to the then Federal Minister of Economics of the West Germany, Ludwig Erhard, in 1959. No one wants to see the UK join the European community more than I do. But if we make too much concession from the beginning, the UK will not participate in the community, he added. This was not a part of my tactics, but rather a firm belief formed in the course of many negotiations with the UK. That is my experience, Jean Monnet said. When they negotiate with others, their national traits were to seek their own special place, which made them not to move much. It had been a problem in the very difficult conversations of the Schuman Plan in the 1950s. They refused to participate in the Paris meeting with the same obligation under the same condition as other countries. Most of them now agree that there would not have been a Schuman Plan if we have provided concession to the UK. Because you are of reality, we will negotiate with you. That is the words from the British people, Sir Roger Mackins, after 2 years. Following his words in his memoirs, I would guess that with indomitable courage, he would have promoted the progress of integration and the reform of the European Union to minimize the side effect of the Brexit for the future of the European Union. Of course, he would do his best to conclude a soft Brexit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. I'd like to invite Professor Park Jae-hoon from Incheon National University. He can have 1 or 2 minutes more because he's remembering Jean Monnet from his reading of Jean Monnet's memoir.
Okay, thank you very much. Just due to time limit, I have to just go to my first slide. Okay, this is the sentence from he's memorizing some story. He was born in France, widely traveled. He died at age 90 near Paris, and President of United Europe. Okay, actually, what the Jean Monnet said is the United States of Europe. He inspired and helped to create. Earlier, from his office in the Villado Hotel, he contributed greatly to America's Victory Program. Okay, this is very important thing. Many people didn't acknowledge, because as you mentioned, the ambassador already, his main contribution is actually he contributed many things during the World War II, World War I and World War II. Okay. Already, Professor Lee said that who is Jean Monnet? He is usually considered as a father of European Union. As also he mentioned that he didn't graduate. Well, he didn't enter any college. He got all of his knowledge from actually his home meeting, home dining, that kind of thing. So also he was born as a son of French cognac merchant. This Monnet cognac is still produced. So my son is brought to me last year. So I tasted it.
Monnet cognac.
Yeah, Monnet cognac, and also later he became a diplomat by during the World War I. At the time, the Prime Minister, France Prime Minister Viviani. It was a very occasional case. he was ordinary man. So he was just picked up by, Viviani as a diplomat. And also, after World War I, he worked as a banker in the U.S. But unfortunately, his bank is bankrupt. So he left United States. But that bank later became a Bank of America. So if he was success in the bank, then maybe instead of his father European Union, he may be a very famous banker. And also, as you know well, he was a founding father of ECSC, High Authority. And then, as you know well, he designed 1950 Schuman Plan Declaration, and also this is mentioned already. He has a close connection with the German Chancellor Adenauer and Schuman and also de Gaulle. And also, at the time, US President Roosevelt. So he utilized this kind of old connection in order to make European integration possible. So one thing, not many people notice that is since 1970, he organized some non-government organization, which is called Action Committee for United States of Europe. So in this, using this organization, he invited many leaders through the whole Europe, mainly from leaders of major parties, political parties, and also labor unions. So if the in this side of committee, major decisions made, then maybe each country maybe they easily decide, make decision. So during his, afterwards his life, until he died, he just, stayed, used this committee. Okay, let me briefly summarize. What is his thought and principles? The first thing is institutionalism. So this is some quotation for his memoir. Each man's experience starts again from the beginning. Only institutions grow wiser. They accumulate collective experience, and owing to this experience, this wisdom, man subject to the same rules, will let their own nature change. But their behavior gradually, not what he said. He is a quotation from Henry Frederick Amiel. Okay, so this is the first element of his thought, and this is more important, I guess. Trust building. So many people asked him, what is the secret of his negotiation? What is your negotiation skill? But he simply said that, let's put our cards on the table, and everyone could be sure that we are talking to him in the same terms as to everyone else. But it is essential to tell people, okay? It is the only way to win trust. Without trust, I will never obtain anything. So this is a very simple secret, in a sense. Okay, third, federalism. Okay, I already mentioned he wanted to make Europe. So this is a kind of federation. Okay, so he wanted to emphasize really delegation of sovereignty is essential instead of simple cooperation between governments. So this is distinguished from confederation. I guess the professor, Dr. Kim Hung-jung said that what is the main advice to Brexit phenomenon recently? I guess if Jang Won is still alive, he would say that you should hurry to political federation. There is a solution. Okay? Do not go back to, just go forward. That could be his solution. Lastly, action-oriented pragmatism. He's a really pragmatist, okay? He's not an idealist. He is a really from business group. He's not a scholar, okay? So his idea is really based on some some pragmatic, some realities. So that's why he organized Action Committee for the United States of Europe. Okay. Okay, this is, I took this picture. This is from Luxembourg. Okay. This is ECSC former headquarters building. Now this is used as some kind of bank. So you can see there's some, indication for this building is a former headquarters. Okay, conclusion. So this is what I'm doing. Okay. Why we have to learn Jean Monnet? Because we wanted to make Asia some integrated and make Asia a community. Okay. So this is my some piece of some effort. Asia Economic Community Forum. The slogan is Create One Asia Together since 2009. So every year, I'm organizing some conference and Asia Economic Community Forum. So this year too, I'm organizing. So everybody you are interested, I welcome to join this conference, including ambassador. Okay, November 7th to 8th, Incheon, Sheraton. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question. If you make some correct answer, I'll give this book. My question is, anybody knows who is Jean Monnet's wife? Where she's from? Anybody?
Italy.
Italy?
She acquired Russian.
Yes. Russia. But what I want is from student. Okay, anyway, thank you.
So thank you. We have completed the section of past of the Jean Monnet. Now we go over to present. We have Jean Monnet and peace building in Northeast Asia. Under this title, I'd like to invite Professor Benjamin Thompson from Gyeongbuk National University.
Hello, good afternoon. To discuss and to think about peace building today in East Asia in Jean Monnet's terms is actually for me to engage in a particular kind of political theory. I'm a political theorist. And this is perhaps somewhat ironic because as we've heard, Jean Monnet didn't go to university and he didn't really have much time for theoretical politics or political philosophy. And yet, nonetheless, there's been a burgeoning literature trying to see Jean Monnet as some kind of political theorist. And this is quite interesting, because it's not really a sense of trying to put together what Jean Monnet meant by his own statements as political theory, but a sense of trying to creatively reimagine what he was up to for present purposes. Now, as the case is, most of the literature which looks at Jean Monnet and his writings and his legacy in this way is tightly integrated with the actual ongoing European project. It's about European Union integration, and primarily Jean Monnet gets used as a kind of theorist of European Union integration. Was he an intergovernmentalist? Was he a supranationalist? Was he a neo-functionalist? These sorts of debates are really, really key to how it is that Jean Monnet gets used as a political theorist. And this is really quite interesting, but it's interesting in Europe. I'm not sure it's interesting for us here today in East Asia. So I want to kind of go back to Jean Monnet's writings and to reimagine him in a different way, not for the purposes of thinking about or practicing European Union integration, but for thinking about how it is the sorts of first steps towards durable peace in East Asia can be cemented, can be followed up on, and can lead to something different. To do so, I want to think of Monnet as a political theorist of equality of a very specific kind. He was an egalitarian in terms of how it is that we should act and what sorts of institutions we should be acting, but he was also an egalitarian in terms of how we think. He focused on the idea of an attitude of unity, and he thought that this was one of the most important ideas that could be cultivated in order to ensure peace building and durable institutions. So, I want to look at the essay A Ferment of Change, which Monnet wrote in the 1960s. And here he really looks at the sorts of threats which Europe and what becomes the European Union have managed to overcome, but threats which are still very much alive in his world, very much alive in our world. What are these threats? Relations, he writes, in the previous 100 years, took the form either of domination, if one country was much stronger than the others, or of the trading of advantages, if there was a balance of powers between them. This balance, he writes, was necessarily unstable, and the concessions made in an agreement one year could always be retracted the next. Monnet, in a sense, is thinking of what we today would call international relations realism, and the idea of offensive and defensive realism studied in international relations departments today kind of nicely summarize and deal with what Monnet is talking about. But it's this problem of domination which is the worst of the two. Domination, its exercise and experience was egregious, and rivalry in pursuit and defense of this kind of relationship is of course charged with power, with resistance to that power, and of course the potential for violence. This occurred not only because of material inequalities between states, but precisely because of an attitude of domination, which Monnet thinks had ruled state policies in Europe for so many centuries, he writes. This attitude was the stuff of what Monnet describes also, and briefly, as 19th century power philosophy. So how do we get past that? Well, Monnet was not a blueprint maker. As we've seen, he was a pragmatist, he was a contextualist, and he wanted to take advantage of opportunities as they arose. So he didn't have a grand plan all of the way along. But two things matter most. One, we need a silent revolution in men's minds, he writes. It's that attitude for unity. There must be a recognition of some confluence of interests beyond those we have in our particular country. Two, we need supranational rulemaking of some kind. This might be federalism, it might be something else. In fact, he's not too particular on what kind of rulemaking, but we need rulemaking that goes beyond simply the representation of interests of separate individual states. Put those two things together, and they mutually reinforce each other. So, lessons for today. One, although the European Union is an interesting experiment and a very successful one, we can't do the same thing in Asia. We need a different course. We need our own pragmatism. We need to start afresh. Two, how we think matters. Thinking about the attitude of domination and power philosophy has some real significant conclusions. And we might say that how we study international politics can serve a certain kind of self-reinforcing and self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to be careful about how we study politics, and we have to be careful about what kinds of political theory we credit or discredit in the study of international relations. It's ironic in a way that we professors are talking about this here today at this learned institution, but I think, just maybe, I trust even that Jean Monnet would approve anyway. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Professor Kim Bong-chul.
I just want to mention about several words, because I'm not the Professor Kim Chi-hong, the Jean Monnet chair in our university. Of course, I'm the Professor Kim as well, but yes, we have learned many things about the idea of Jean Monnet, and the present in the Northeast Asia. We think about the building of the peace in this area. Actually, I spent 4 years in the front line against North Korea when I was 20-something years old. So I know many things about the North Korean issues. But the thing is that North Korea is the people in there are Koreans. The simple ideas, I mean the philosophy of the Jean Monnet, the United States of Europe, still in the Korean Peninsula we have many theories or sometimes dangerous issues in this area. But we can cover, I believe that we can cover the sensitive issues with the very simple and pure idea from Jean Monnet, the United States of Europe. Well, yeah, this is very sensitive things considering the Korean national law. But my idea is that if we apply the simple philosophy to the Korean Peninsula, the United States of Europe, the, for example, United States of Korea. Yes, I know it's very, very difficult job, and it takes long time. But to make the peace in the Northeast Asia, we have to overcome these things first. The peace in Korean Peninsula is the first step for the building of peace in Northeast Asia. So let me say that the very simple things. Jean Monnet he's not just the idea makers. He did many things to make come true in of his idea in the European area. So young generation have to do, if we learned about the philosophy of Jean Monnet, then we have to do something to apply this idea to the Korean Peninsula, to make the maybe the United States of Korea, and then we can, as the second step, we can think about the pure, whole, final peace in Northeast Asia. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kim. Professor Kim Bong-chul took a very bold step, talking sitting. So I think we can talk sitting as well from now. So I'd like to invite Professor Moon of Seoul National University.
Thank you. I'll try to frame my talk in 3 stages as just like it is in the program. Past, present, and the future. So what is the state of affairs for the East Asian integration? Basically, until very recently, the East Asian integration had its heyday. European integration expanding, as summarized by widening, deepening, and enlargement. East Asian initiatives, many East Asian initiatives were emerging, but given the intensity of the talks and interest, the performance was rather disappointing. In the sense, there was no important institutionalization. Nevertheless, we see today 2 important maybe framework. First of all, ASEAN +3, and second, in the area of financial and monetary cooperation, AMRO, which is an institution to provide financial support when countries in Asia are in crisis. What is present state of East Asian integration? When I was asked my close colleague, Professor Park, to speak on this issue of East Asian integration, I was wondering what I should speak because I thought that these East Asian initiatives and East Asian integration ideas and initiatives are losing their way, largely because of the rise in China. Furthermore, as you know, recently the European financial crisis and Brexit played some quite important role in discouraging our interest in integration, basically. And the emergence of Trump administration in US was another factor, maybe. I'm not sure what will be the future way for East Asian integration. Already, if you look at the economic state of affairs, the intra-trade share of China was maybe from the mid-2000 decreasing quite importantly. So if there is an integration or closer cooperation in Asia, I think it is more between China on one side and the rest of Asia on the other side. So if we have more this initiative, it's more likely between countries neighboring China against China. Maybe from this perspective, I think the future relation between Korea and Japan will be really crucial. Maybe and then if maybe for some reason, if we have closer relation among neighboring countries, then we have also one very important question regarding the role of China. When Europe started its integration, US was rather supportive, or at least it did not prevent from European countries from forming the Union. But it's very likely China would be really against. So that can we really see some of the integration in Asia? Well, that's a question to answer maybe, but I have no idea right now. So, so I have summarized the past, present, and future, and well, this is my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Moon. I'd like to invite Bae Myung-bok, editor-at-large at Jungang Daily.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no PPT to show you, so allow me to speak at my place. My first time as a correspondent in Paris for the Jungang Ilbo was back in 1989. It's a shame for me to admit back then I did not know about Jang Monnet. Professor Lee Jae-sung mentioned about the ignorance of Korean media about Jang Monnet. I learned about Jang Monnet as I studied the history of the European integration before taking up my mission as a correspondent. As I started working in Paris, I became aware of his achievements and the status as a founding father of the European coal and steel community, which later became the European Union. The title of my presentation is Europe, Jang Monnet, and Asia, Perspective from the Media. To tell you the truth, this was not my idea. The chair of this conference, Professor Park, proposed it, and I accepted it without much thinking about it. As I was wondering what to present today, I imagined what advice Jang Monnet would give to the Korean people if he were alive and attended this conference. If Jang Monnet were alive now, he would most certainly have advised the Koreans to present the vision of a Northeast Asian community centered on Korea, China, and Japan, and to seek the key to peace and prosperity of the Korean Peninsula within this community. Korea, China, and Japan have an unfortunate history of domination, occupation, aggression, and war. South Korea and Japan, allies of the United States, cannot be free from potential conflict between China and the U.S. Should the U.S. and China collide in the trap of Thucydides, the entire Northeast Asia is likely to become a battleground. It would be Jean Monnet's advice to consolidate Korea, China, and Japan into a single community like EU and enhance interdependency in order to make war difficult. War is impossible without energy. How about using the smart grid technology to tie the three countries' energy supply chains together and launch the first step towards a Northeast Asian community by creating an energy community that jointly manages the supply and demand of energy? I think it would also be good to start with the Northeast Asian environment or climate change community centered on the fine dust issue that recently increasingly worsened. The next step is to form a single market in Northeast Asia where goods, people, money, and services are free to move like in Europe. If students and young people from Korea, China, Japan are able to study wherever they want and freely get their jobs without restriction, Northeast Asia will be a common house with a single roof in a generation or two. It would be another lesson for Jean Monnet that Korea should take a leading role in realizing the dream of a prosperous and peaceful Northeast Asian community. Since ancient times, Korea has been a strategic element between China, a continental power, and Japan, a maritime power. Turning a geopolitical weakness surrounded by great powers into an opportunity, Korea could play a role as an anchor to firmly fix China and Japan in Northeast Asia, as well as a bridge to link ocean and continent. Of course, I acknowledge that it is an unrealistic idea for Korea to lead the Northeastern Asian community at this stage. South Korea is now trapped in the conundrum of the North Korean nuclear issue. It is a pipe dream that cannot be realized before the permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula is settled by resolving the North Korean nuclear issue, and the two Koreas can overcome the division. Conflict with Japan is also a problem. Although Korea has liberated from Japanese colonial rule over 7 years ago, Korea and Japan are still continuing their antagonism and confrontation due to their past. If Jean Monnet were here, he may advise the two countries to make a real reconciliation based on the example of France and Germany before moving on to building a regional community. The future belongs to the dreamer. What I'd like to tell you today in the name of Jean Monnet is that you should raise big questions looking forward to the far future. No matter how ridiculous the questions are, you have to open your wings of imagination to pioneer a new future. The elephant in the room problem can be solved only when the world around the room is toned down. For example, questions such as can the ROK-US alliance and the US-Japan alliance remain the same as they are now, even after 30 to 50 years? How will the world order change when China becomes a superpower that surpasses the United States? And what should Korea have to do with China? By supplying Wittgenstein's statement that the problem is not solved but disappears to the North Korean nuclear issue, would there be a way to make the problem of North Korean nuclear weapons disappear? Will the nuclear non-proliferation treaty be maintained in the distant future? Is there any way for the two Koreas to be one neutral nation like Austria or Switzerland? Jean Monnet was a well-connected, pragmatic internationalist. He had an unrivaled international network of people, along with imaginative power and the great vision of breaking the frame and insight for the future and the pragmatic sense. He had also the ability to persuade others with a distinguished personality and eloquence. Without Jean Monnet, Europe might have gone into wars again. I would like to conclude this by wishing that Jean Monnet of Korea, who has the out-of-the-box thinking and international connections, is among all of you who attended today's conference. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wei. Thanks a lot. So let's go over to the future discussion about future. Professor Yeonho Lee of Yonsei University.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Park. I am Yeonho Lee, the director of the Jean Monnet Youth Center at Yonsei University. The topic of my speech is on the role of the EU on the Korean Peninsula. Actually, this is the question they have been confronted with the audiences for the last many, many years. And I have just once or twice per year have a chance to give a speech on the Korea-EU relations, particularly in front of the junior or senior government officers being trained in the government organizations. After listening to my about 1 hour or 2 hours lecture, often I have been questions. Yes, Professor Lee, I can understand. EU is important. Yes, it is particularly now important because of the Brexit. But I don't understand why, what kind of lesson we can get from it. Still, South Korea, to the position of the South Korea, US is of prime importance because they are stationing their military forces. They have a practical key of solving the problems of the Korean Peninsula. Because of that experience, this topic, the role of the EU on the Korean Peninsula, became naturally my research topic. What EU can do for the sake of Korea? I think, let me put it this way. Why EU is important? Firstly, of all, EU is important because EU is an ideological alliance to Korea. EU and Korea, we have been signing mainly 3 important agreements. One is a framework agreement and strategic partnership and an FTA. In the preambles of those agreements, both parties agree that we are going to share the common values, which include non-proliferation of the WMD, and human rights, and anti-terrorism, and development cooperation, and democracy, human rights, and also other issues related to capitalism and democracy. I think this is very, very important for the position of Korea. When we particularly talk about reunification and also cooperation between South and North Korea, the support, ideological support from the EU for South Korea will play a very, very important role in the defining the shape and the future feature of the future Koreas. So therefore, in that sense, of course, there can be a military solutions in designing the reunification or cooperation between South and North. But at the same time, there should be another dimension of the cooperation as well, which is non-military. In that respect, I think we need to make a close cooperation with EU, and also we can seek support from the EU as well. And also, secondly, in order to, if we are to consider peaceful coexistence between South and North Korea, I think EU is, again, quite important as well for the sake of Korea. Now, when in discussing the cooperation between South and North, now the Minister of Reunification is considering European option as well, which includes how South and North Korea can make a cooperation by taking advantage of the economic and functional cooperation between the two. If I review the cases of the 20s, modern, very modern history, the EU is the very good example of the success of the functional cooperation. As the Professor Lee mentioned, they have started this approach with the ECSC in 1951, and also EEC 1957, and EC 1967, 57, EC 1967, finally EU in 1993. The ECSC, of course, it is a very much strategic case of the cooperation. At the same time, the idea started from the very economic and functional and secular ideas. So how could they manage the market of the coal and steel, which is very important for the economy and also military as well. So I think we can get the good lessons from the European cases as well if we are taking the option of the economic cooperation between South and North Korea. Certainly that it should be, EU should be a good example for that as well. Another aspect of the lesson we can get from the EU is a cultural cooperation. Once Jean Monnet recalled, we need to recall the statement of the Jean Monnet. He argued that if we resume European integration, we will start in the cultural sector first. So cultural cooperation is related to the identity, how to make a joint and common identity amongst the members of cooperation body. So we need, if we are to think about the reunification and cooperation between South and North Korea, we need to think about joint and common identity between two Koreas. That could be achieved through the cultural cooperation as well. So particularly EU is very good at that as well. Finally, not the least, one day we may need to think about human rights issue as well. At a certain stage, we may have to raise the issue of the human rights issue in dealing with the relationship with North Korea as well. So maybe that is a quite tough topics and not be easy to resolve, but in that circumstances, again, we can get a good cooperation and lesson from the EU as well. In conclusion, why EU is important? What kind of lesson we can get from the EU cases? Well, when I teach international politics, there are two kinds of issues. One is hard, the other is soft. So, well, when we deal with issues of soft politics, EU, certainly they will give very good lessons and a good example we can review very seriously. Thank you very much. I will stop here.
Thank you. Professor Lee from Busan National University.
Thank you for your invitation to this conference. Yes, I'm from the Busan National University. Yes. I'm director of the PNU Center. Yes. I'm not sure whether Mr. Jean Monnet would like to this kind of statistics in order for me to analyze this kind of Jean Monnet Center role and the contribution to Korean university. Let me introduce just the EU month activity in Busan National University. You told me we have this kind of activities, the EU Europe Day. And then the Korean Society contemporaries will go to the Bukyong National University in order for us to participate in this kind of the EU session. And also, yes, we have the 2019 global gathering. Almost 20 or 30,000 foreigners will gather together in order for to share some of the EU and some of the worldwide concept. And also, yes, we have a schedule to invite the ambassador of Latvia to Busan National University. Also, in the end of June, yes, we'll go to Latvia to extend some of the academic exchange, student scholar. President and I will go to the Latvia. And also, yes, we will invite Silicon CEO. He's a K-pop musician. Yes, he's very interested in the not only the K-pop but also in worldwide as well as the EU. And also, yes, we are going to participate in the EU Council associated with this kind of activities. I would like to introduce what's the role of the EU Center using statistics. Actually speaking, as I presented this last year at the Kyushu University, as far as I know, unfortunately, yes, we are going to talk about a lot the EU Center or the Monnet Center. As far as I know, only the Martin Hollands in the New Zealand are going to investigate this kind of EU perspective, but he did not analyze this kind of EU center using the statistics. He described only what's the perspective of the EU. Therefore, yes, at that time, I met him several times in other places where he talked about this several times, but at that time, I was somewhat complaining about his method, right? Therefore, yes, I would like to investigate it, analyze what is the Monnet Center and the EU Center and the European study in Korea using the empirical proof. Right? I'm not spending a lot of time, yes, because we don't have the sufficient time. But anyways, let me summarize this. First of all, yes, I would like to investigate this. What's the EU Center and Monnet Center's role and the usefulness? You can the mean 1.79, 1.77 as 1 is very strong, as 5 is very low. Therefore, generally, I focus on Busan National University EU Center nowadays, Monnet Center, right? The students are very proud of the usefulness of the EU class opened by the EU Monnet Center. It means the EU class is very helpful for them to understand the EU. And also, they are very proud of the Busan National University EU Monnet Center. Our president should know this, right? This is the Monnet Center Pride and Usefulness Programs. Once again, I investigated this using the student empirically.
Professor Lee, you have only 1 minute. Sorry for that.
Maybe the Monnet will give me a more minute, I guess. Just kidding. Okay, this is 1 or 2 is very proud. They are very proud of the Monnet Center and the usefulness. Maybe 70 or 80% of students are very proud of Monnet Center and very useful. And the Monnet Center's program is also very useful. Almost 90% students. And preference on the EU job and studying in the EU countries, you can see that Germany and France, the United Kingdoms are very preferred by the students in terms of job and in terms of study. Now, this is another kind of analysis, right? This, you can see the EU knowledge. The students knows EU EU well, as they are very proud of the EU Center, Monnet Center. They do not know the EU. They do not understand the EU. Only a few percent is proud of this. I mean, if the students knows the EU Center and the EU well, then they are so proud of the Monnet Center in Korea. And this is the usefulness and the role of Monnet Center. Monnet Center also, yes, they know EU. They have deep knowledge in EU. They thought the usefulness and role of Monnet Center very, very large, right? Comparing with the low knowledge student. And there is a strong difference between the high knowledge student and low knowledge student statistically. I would like to skip this part. And this part, this is maneuver test, right? Contribution. You can see that this is dependent variable, this is independent variable. They are, the Korea EU FTA's contribution are largely to only Korean economy. The EU contribution, the world economy, Europe's contribution are larger and larger. Then you can see the pride of John Monnet Center is also larger and larger. There are positive relations between this and this. You can see this. And also usefulness of John Monnet Center. And the studying program, you can see there. Okay, Professor Park won me. Okay, let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Kim of USA Korea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador Reiter and Chair Professor Park for this excellent conference. According to Jean Monnet's memoir, he said what he was interested in was to put the people together and to resolve the concerns that made the people divide, and finally to persuade the people to look forward to their common interest. He also put great emphasis on the institutions which would make the people's decision and process as sustainable. As our scholars clearly analyzed, the Jean Monnet program Splendid has supported and motivated diverse academic activities and networking during the past 30 years. Focusing on the sustainability of the program, I'd like to pay my attention to a dynamic mobility of the young people. According to the European Commission, around 3.3 million of young people in the EU, it means 3.7% of the total young people, has been benefited of the EU program for education, training, youth and sport in 2014 to 2020. Up to 2 million students would be privileges of grants to study and training abroad. More than 135,000 students and staff could come to Europe and go outside Europe to take their special education, training, apprenticeship experiences. I find 3 points as interesting in the youth mobility in EU. First one is that their mobility can be characterized as a reciprocal. They move each other to share and know their different viewpoints as well as common interests. It's not a one-side tour or visit. Second one is that their mobility is supported by the institutions of the EU. They are motivated spontaneously to enjoy their youth and explore their ways toward more interesting work. Thirdly, they are making their own future by means of their interaction or mutuality, which should raise up their creativity. The young people in Asian countries need to develop not only their individual ability, but also their global ability and experiences. They need to take special opportunities of vocational studies and training and apprenticeship. But now, for example, the majority of Korean students tend to make a simple tour or visit in pursuing their own curiosity abroad. They do not have any interpenetrating, multidimensional activities. Asian countries, even not all of the countries, have to be opener and more interactive so as to offer more chances of youth mobility. It's necessary that they, especially ASEAN, means 10 countries included, plus 3 countries, Korea, Japan, China, try to establish an institution to mobilize and motivate the young people to a great community. The future of the Asian countries is upon them, who will confront with global competition and cooperation as more severely. In this context, I briefly suggest 3 points. Firstly, Asian countries have to deliver an education about Asian community value. For example, solidarity and regional peace building, as well as economic prosperity based on economic integration. It's the point that Mr. Ambassador Reiter emphasized. Secondly, I'd like to establish a kind of foundation by which we could offer a common testing opportunities of studying, training, trying global startup. Finally, based on this foundation, I want to suggest to operate our interesting program as like an Erasmus Plus program, including Jeong Monnet activities, to encourage and raise up young people's Asian network and activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kim. Last but not least, we like to have Professor Kim Nam-gu of Korea University.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Park, and thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for excellent audience. My name is Nam-gu Kim at Korea University. I'm the last person to present, and this difficult topic was mandatorily given to me by Professor Park as a future. As you know, the future is always murky and complicated. And if you want to make your future too much clear, then you are now challenging the God or God's sphere. So I own to do that. And I think about the Jeong Monnet. Above all, I love his impressive words. For example, he said, without people, we cannot initiate any new plans. Likewise, without institutions, we cannot sustain any such plans. Jeong Monnet did his best to bring reconciliation between France and Germany after World War II of a hatred and hostility. Despite his vision of perpetual peace through European integration, I believe he is a true realist because his plan of European core and steel community show a proper combination of interest, identity, and institutions, as Professor Lee mentioned. Among these 3 factors, his emphasis goes foremost interest and an interest-based integrations. This kind of realistic approach and the proper balance among interest, identity, and institution is important in East Asian situations. Today's the Korea and Japan relations and also regional order in East Asia has been dominated by the present with hostage of past. So we share the past, but we cannot share the interpretation of that past. Such a hatred and animosity has overshadowed Asia's future. So we should find and build East Asian community as a space of possibility beyond the past memories. I also remember Jeong Monnet's word in 1906. His father sent him abroad to work for the family business and said, do not bring any books, no one can think for you, and then look out the window and talk to people. This is also a very realistic approach. Let me put it in this case in Asian situation. The Gannon, the NPO, and East Asian Institute survey yielded 2 interesting findings that could be employed to lower the negative perception among the population of East Asian nations. The first factor is whether an individual has traveled to the other countries. For example, South Koreans and Japanese people who have visited each other countries show more positive response than those who have not. The second factor is age. The younger generation in both South Korea and Japan display lower the negative perception than older respondents. So in other words, the negative perception appear to be decreasing with every generation in Korea and Japan. These results demonstrate the value of people-to-people interaction and the need for increased interchange and investment targeting younger generations. So current development in East Asia are once again being dominated by the state, with the North Korean nuclear crisis and tension in the South China Sea demonstrating the continued relevance of the state. In this context, East Asia could seek to foster great intrapersonal solidarity among its citizens who share an attachment to democratic individuality while also acknowledging cultural diversity as a way to venture beyond the nation-state kind of identities. So by encouraging networking and cross-border solidarity, we should build a Asia of citizen rather than Asia of state. I once published the title of a paper. And Zhang Monnet once also said the similar word: we are not forming coalition of state, we are uniting men for his vision for the European integrations. Lastly, I love also Zhang Monnet's word. There are two kinds of people, he said. Those who want to be someone and those who want to do something. Of course, this word originally was said by his friend Dwight Morrow, who was a US Senator and US Ambassador to Mexico. If the future generation of Asia concerned to do something rather than to be someone, and if that something becomes a stable peace regime through a regional cooperation in Asia, then the future of Asia will be different. In this sense, Zhang Monnet still gives us a good insight for the situation in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kim. Ladies and gentlemen, we have finished our discussion. We have discussed the personal background, economic and political doings of Zhang Monnet, global trotter side of Zhang Monnet, and contribution to peace and community building in Europe, as well as we have discussed the implications he is giving to today's East Asia, Northeast Asia, and Korean Peninsula. I'm really sorry to all the panelists that we have been able to allocate only 5 minutes to 7 maximum. But I think if somebody would like to read or would like to have some implications from this seminar, I think we will make a small booklet out of this discussion so that we will disseminate it through our networks. Thank you very much, and I'd like to hand over microphone to Professor Lee, master of the event.
Thank you, Professor Park, for proceeding this tight and challenge the round table. Actually, as you have seen, this was not designed as a typical academic session with the long presentation and discussion. Rather, it was a short kind of series of short notes and short lectures on Zhang Monnet and his ideas. And as Professor Park mentioned, the EU Center and Zhang Monnet Centers will try to make a brief the booklet on the outcome of this Zhang Monnet Memorial Conference. Okay, so we will wrap up the Zhang Monnet Roundtable session, and we will start the closing ceremony. And the first part is the UCC Award. A couple of weeks ago, KU-KFSBC EU Center, sponsored by EU delegation, announced a UCC contest. It was a brief, the video clips, and student, not professional, but the students were asked to participate in the UCC contest. And 2 best video clips that you have seen before this session were selected as the best UCC. So the award ceremony will be led by His Excellency Ambassador Leiter. And we have 2 awardee of the UCC contest. The first awardee is Mr. Alessandro Scromo. Okay, certificate of recognition. This award is given to Alessandro Scromo, Jean Monnet, the European integration, for winning the best award in the 2019 Europe Day Student UCC contest, bringing Jean Monnet back past, present, and future, organized by the KU Kiev SBS EU Center, Korea University, May the 9th Europe Day 2019. His Excellency Mikhail Reicher, Ambassador of the European Union to the Republic of Korea. Congratulations. And also the additional special award will be bestowed by delivered by Professor Sung-Won Park, KU Kiev SBS EU Center. The second awardee is Miss Nam Kyung Kim of Busan University, but actually she has a very tight schedule, class schedule, and she was too far away. So on behalf, this time on behalf of Miss Nam Kyung Kim, the director, Chedok Kim, will be the awardee. So this award is given to Nam Kyung Kim, the better word with Jean Monnet. The content is same as above. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest to congratulate this Jean Monnet Memorial Conference and also the EU Day event. President Jung Jin-taek of Korea University came here to give a closing remark. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcoming President Jung Jin-taek with a warm round of applause.
His Excellency Dr. Mikhail Leiter, EU Ambassador to Korea, Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Happy Europe Day, and welcome to Korea University. It's my great pleasure and honor to deliver on behalf of Korea University these closing remarks for the successful completion of the Jean Monnet Conference, celebrating the 2019 Europe Day and the 30th anniversary of Jean Monnet programs of the European Union. As far as I'm concerned, the European Union and Korea University have built a long-term special friendship. At the beginning of the 1980s, Korea University established EU Research Center, which was the first such research center ever established by an institution of higher education in Korea. The research and education activities within Korea University have grown continuously ever since, and we at Korea University are extremely proud of the fact that 3 of 6 total number of Jean Monnet chairs awarded by the European Union to Korea are Korea University professors. We have been enriched by this and other EU-related research and educational programs over the past 3 decades. Thanks to the European Commission's generous support, Korea University was able to also upgrade the EU Research Center by establishing KU Kiev SBS EU Center in May 2014. Throughout this project's lifespan, the EU Center significantly promoted EU-related academic, research, and outreach activities in Korea. Since September 2016, Korea University was awarded Jean Monnet Network Project and has played a leadership role in an international research consortium in exploring the EU's strategic partnership with Asian countries. As the president of Korea University, I strongly believe that this way the Korea University was able to establish itself as the hub of EU studies in the Asia-Pacific region and has played a very important role in bridging Asia and Europe. This Jean Monnet Conference is a meaningful event for all of us. In this year, the European Union has been celebrating the 30th anniversary of Jean Monnet actions through a series of events around the world under the grand theme of Jean Monnet 30 Years of Excellence in EU Studies. It is indeed my great pleasure to be a part of these worldwide activities. I am fully aware that the conference has discussed the past, present, and future of Jean Monnet, who is the one of founding fathers of the European integration. Many discussions today will provide a valuable opportunity to earn invaluable lessons for the peaceful and prosperous coexistence of countries in Asia, and more specifically, Northeast Asia. As some panelists have already elaborated, the ideas and philosophy of Jean Monnet and Jean Monnet programs have given us inspiration on the connectivity and identity and community building among the different cultures and nations in the Asian region. I sincerely hope that today's discussion contributes greatly to the reconciliation among nations in this part of the world that is desperately needed for the peace-building process. We have to continuously find new areas and ways of cooperation in this changing world. For this important mission, Jean Monnet has already given us the valuable instruction. He said, "Make men work together. Show them that beyond their differences and geographical boundaries, there lies a common interest." Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, if we work together under this spirit, I'm sure that we can achieve our final goal of peaceful prosperity in the world, and more specifically in Asia. Closing my remarks, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the KU-KF SBS EU Center and the Nordic Benedict Center of the Korea University for organizing this important event. Also, my genuine thanks goes to the panelists who have greatly contributed to the success of this conference. Last but not least, I would like to thank Ambassador Leitner for his continuous support for these EU studies in Korea University and other universities in Korea. We at Korea University will continue to offer highest quality education programs and conduct excellent research with regards to the European Union. I offer my full support. Thank you very much for your attention and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, President Chung. So we will now wrap up the Jean Monnet Memorial Conference. And once again, on behalf of the organizer, I thank all the panelists and audience who participated in this meaningful event and showed their warm attention. Thank you very much and happy Europe Day.